Good morning, students. Today we will do a new topic from chemical bonding chapter. This is polar and non-polar molecule. So this is one of the important topic from chemical bonding chapter. Actually, some molecules are called polar molecule and some molecules are called non-polar molecule. So what is polar and non-polar molecule? If you consider hydrogen molecule contain a covalent bond between two hydrogen atoms. The electron of one hydrogen shares with another electron of hydrogen and they produce the covalent bond like this. This hydrogen atom attract the electron of this hydrogen atom, and similarly this hydrogen atom attract the electron of this hydrogen. Here the attracting power of both the hydrogen atoms are same, because since the atoms are same, their electronegativity value is same. I mean they can attract equally, and that is why in this type of molecule the bonded electron will be present at the middle position of the bond. But if you consider HCl molecule, hydrogen chloride, one electron of hydrogen shares with one electron of chlorine. Chlorine contains 7 valence electron. So sharing takes place like this, and they produce the covalent bond between hydrogen and chlorine contains 3 lone pair of electron. Here hydrogen attract the chlorine electron and chlorine attract the hydrogen electron. Here the attracting power of hydrogen and attracting power of chlorine is not same, because both have different electronegativity value. In third chapter we have got about the electronegativity. Since chlorine is more electronegative than hydrogen, so that is why the bonded electron, shared pair of electron, will be attracted by chlorine more as compared to hydrogen. And since chlorine attract the electron more, that is why the bonded electron goes towards chlorine side, because chlorine attract more than hydrogen. So when the bonded electron, when the shared pair of electron move towards chlorine, then electron density inside chlorine increases and the electron density inside hydrogen decreases. And due to increase in electron density, chlorine will be partially negative and hydrogen will be partially positive, and these partial charges are represented by delta plus and delta minus. Actually these are not permanent charges, these are partial charges. That is why the delta symbol is used here. For example, chlorine, its configuration 2H7. When it gain one extra electron, then it becomes permanently minus. Electronic configuration become 288. So when it gained the electron, totally it gained the electron, then it becomes permanently minus. But here it just attract the electron towards it. Chlorine do not gain the electron permanently. So that is why this type of charges are called partial charges. Partially chlorine is negatively charged and partially hydrogen will be positively charged. Why it is negative? Due to increase in electron density. And why it is positive? Due to decrease in electron density. But in case of hydrogen molecule, since both the atom attract equally, that is why there will be no increase in electron density or decrease in electron density inside the atoms. And that is why this type of molecule cannot produce any delta plus and delta minus charges. Now, in HCl, due to electronegativity difference, since they produce some pole, one is positive pole and one negative pole, due to production of two poles, this type of molecules are called polar molecule. And the bond is said to be polar covalent bond. Have you got it? Molecule is called polar molecule and the bond is called polar covalent bond. Here hydrogen molecule is said to be non-polar molecule because no such pole is exist, positive and negative pole does not exist. That's why this type of molecule are called non-polar molecule, and the bond is said to be non-polar covalent bond. Non-polar covalent bond. So this is about the polar and non-polar molecule. To get the polar molecule, the bond should be present between two different electronegative atoms. One should be more electronegative, another should be less electronegative. And to get non-polar molecule, the bond should be present between similar atom or between similar electronegative element. So that is why if you want to write the definition of polar molecule and non-polar molecule, then you have to write the definition like this. When a covalent bond is formed between two similar electronegative atoms, then the shared pair of electrons are equally attracted by both the atoms, and so it cannot create any positive and negative pole, and this type of molecules are called non-polar molecule, and the bond is said to be non-polar covalent bond. For example, hydrogen molecule is one example of non-polar molecule. How to define polar molecule? When a covalent bond is formed between two different electronegative atoms, then the electronegative atom attract the shared pair of electron more towards itself, due to which it becomes partially negative and the other end of the molecule become partially positive. This type of molecule which can produce positive and negative pole, this type of molecules are called polar molecule, and the bond is said to be polar covalent bond. Example, if you want to write, HCl is one example of polar molecule. Similarly, HF, this is another polar molecule because fluorine is more electronegative than hydrogen. So fluorine will be delta minus, hydrogen will be delta plus. This is one example of polar molecule. HCl is one example of polar molecule, already I have given. HBr is one example of polar molecule due to electronegativity difference between hydrogen and bromine. HI is one example of polar molecule, hydrogen is delta plus, iodine is delta minus. So these are all example of polar molecule. But if you want to compare their polarity, who will be more polar among HF, HCl, HBr, HI? So polarity will be more if the electronegativity difference is more. You know, among fluorine, chlorine, bromine, iodine, fluorine is highest electronegative element. So due to more electronegative nature, HF will be more polar than HCl, than HBr, than HI. So if you want to find out the order of polarity, then you have to find out the order from the electronegativity difference. If the electronegativity difference is more, polarity will be more. There are number of molecules in water, as you know, I will tell you later. Water, it has band shape. Here the bond is present between oxygen and hydrogen. As you know, oxygen is highly electronegative, that's why it becomes delta minus, hydrogen will be delta plus. Similarly, here hydrogen will be delta plus. So since it can produce delta plus and delta minus, so it is also one example of polar molecule. Polar molecule. So water is a polar molecule, and as you know, water normally used as solvent to make the solution. Water acts as solvent. So water is one example of polar solvent. I think you have heard about polar solvent. There are some solvent which are called polar solvent, and there are some solvent which are called non-polar solvent. So you know, ionic compounds are soluble in polar solvent. Polar solvent example is water, and covalent compounds are soluble in non-polar solvent. Non-polar example, you can write benzene act as solvent. In benzene, you know, the bonds are present between carbon-carbon and with hydrogen. So carbon and hydrogen electronegativity is almost same. That is why benzene is one example of non-polar solvent. I mean, it's an example of non-polar molecule. So since it acts as solvent, so benzene is one example of non-polar solvent. That is why covalent compound, if you want to dissolve, then you have to dissolve in non-polar solvent like benzene. So this is about the polar and non-polar molecule definition. Already I have told you. You try to write the definition of polar and non-polar molecule, and these are the examples. Thank you.